Welcome to Plymouth Chapel's latest video. I've been thinking about the book of Job, tucked away in the middle of the Bible recently. The story really of one man and a time of suffering that he went through. It's a very unique and interesting book because the story really starts in heaven, with a view of heaven and what goes on there that we don't get anywhere else. As God hauls Satan up before him and asks him what he's been doing, and then says to him, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Now Job has been introduced to us as a wealthy man, a family man, a God-fearing man, just living a good and a righteous life. And God shows him to Satan, and Satan says, in effect, well, Job is that way because you've just blessed him and given him so much good. Of course he honours you. Of course he worships you and obeys you. So God, in a nutshell, lets the devil loose on him. And in round one, Job loses his wealth and his sons and daughters in an accident. In round two, he loses his health as his body is covered in sores. So Job's lying there, everything gone from him. His wealth, he's destitute, he's grieving for his family, he's sick. But he refuses to give up on God, to curse God and die as his wife suggests he should do. Now, the next big section of the book is taken up with mostly three friends and then a fourth who turn up and start giving him long lectures on why this has happened. Basically around the idea, Job, you've messed up, you've done something wrong, and that's why all this stuff is going wrong and going bad for you. Job refuses to accept that, and at one point cries out saying, "I wish I could ask God about this." Well, you get to the end of the book and God turns up, and God says to Job, "Well, you wanted me, so here I am, let me ask you some questions." And God starts to talk to Job in a way that basically says, "Were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth? Do you call the stars out by name? Consider these different animals and birds. Do you know where their food's kept? Do you know about the migration? Do you know when they have young? Do you keep the weather somewhere in a store? Do you know all of this stuff and everything that goes on?" And Job is blown away. He's just in awe of God and the greatness and the wonder of who God is. God never explains to Job why everything's happened. He isn't privy to the behind-the-scenes conversations in heaven that we know about. But Job still looks at God and doesn't ask him any more questions. He just worships him and is in awe of his sovereignty and his power and his grace and his glory. And God then restores Job the blessings that he has lost. Wealth, family, peace, and Job goes on with his life. So I was just thinking there's 4 or 5 lessons, conclusions if you like, that we can draw for times of suffering and difficulty by thinking about this character of Job. And I'm not going to say anything much about them, I just thought I'd leave them with you to think through. One is this: God is in control. God is in control. I know it doesn't always seem like it, but from the book of Job we see that the overall choices and decisions for this world do sit with God. And sometimes that might confuse us, but it should also comfort us that this world is not out of control. Secondly, there are evil powers that seek to harm and discredit the people of God. I'm not talking about a little sort of cartoon red-horned character with a pitchfork when I talk about Satan and the devil, but rather a person of awesome power and awesome evil who hates God and everything that God stands for. That does explain some of the stuff we see in this world. Thirdly, as the New Testament says, God can and does work things together for good for those that love God. In the midst of everything, God is still working. And if you take the book of Job, which is really, really old, even in Bible terms, for thousands of years that story has helped people who are going through times of suffering themselves. Fourthly, God might not always explain why things go wrong, but in the midst of it all, we can get to know him better. Job, at the end of it all, uttered a wonderful line when he said, "My ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." In the midst of all that suffering, as God revealed himself to Job, Job understood and saw and took in God in a way he never had before. And I suppose we could ask then, or add fifthly, that when things are going wrong, it doesn't mean God isn't there. God was always present in Job's story, and God did bring him through. It's the kind of God we have. We might not always be aware of him. We might not always be able to see his hand at work, but God is faithful. He is always there, and he will bring things together for the good of those who love him. Trust this will encourage you. God bless.